Bride Hill. My husband has Alzheimer's disease, and my daughter does not believe me. If I ring her and say, he went out for ham and milk and he came back with an empty bag, she will say, oh, I do that all the time. Or if I say, for example, he took the bus into town and then he walked back, she will say, that's the healthy option. And if I say, no, it was because he couldn't remember where the bus stop was, she will laugh and say, he's a philosopher, what do you expect? I say, today he bought the Guardian twice and there are 6 reels of twine in the shed when we only need 1. And she says, Mum, you have to take into account that you're both retired now. You're in the house together now all the time. You're just noticing stuff, normal stuff. Why don't you come here for a week, help out with the kids, give yourself some space? But as she predicts, I do not do this. Ordinary, says my daughter, over and over, normal. And of course it is ordinary for him to walk past the bus stop, normal for him to carry several full paper bags or one empty one. And yes, he has always liked shopping at the ironmonger's. I am a materialist, after all, he will say to the neighbours or their 2 young children, and then he will explain at length what this means philosophically. In the shed, everything is in order to look at, everything is normal. It would take me, the nagging, fault-finding wife, to notice the extra twine, or that he has twice left the shovel in the compost, and once on top of the car. I think my daughter thinks we are too young for such a problem. I think that because Jeff is 68 and I am 65, because we are thin, brown, white-haired people with gold-framed glasses, because we are the active retired and favour a practical style of dress in modern fabrics such as fleece and colourful lace-up shoes and walking trousers which we buy from a German catalogue, because we often undertake long walks using Scandinavian metal poles, my daughter thinks our brains are equally wiry, equally up to the coast walks of the mind. Or she thinks I'm making it up. My daughter has always thought I grudge her. It's not the war, my daughter says. There isn't rationing. My daughter's business from the day that she could get out of the front gate on her own, the moment she got her fat hand on the hot tap, has been to defy me, to run the deep bath, to get first the Parma violets and then the cheap clothes and the boyfriends and now the 4x4 and the widescreen telly for herself, despite me. I believe my daughter discusses my phone calls with her friends, among whom it is well known that wives bear grudges, wives like me, who gave everything up, unlike the wives of Jennifer's generation who apparently have it all. But if jobs are so much careers, then at least my daughter should respect my scientific training when she has none herself. She often rolls her eyes at the antiquity of my degree, says times have moved on since 65, Mum. But in fact I have read about the new thinking in the area of Alzheimer's and looked things up at the computer, at which I am a dab hand. I have tried to bring my daughter up to date with my research. I rang and said, Jennifer, do you know what the hippocampus is? And she sighed and guessed horsefield. Latin was one of her O-levels. And when I said no, hippocampus meant seahorse, she said, and you say Dad's senile? Well, this sort of banter is part of our relationship. Many mothers and daughters behave like this. There is no point in taking offence or in writing a letter with a diagram enclosed because my daughter does not do letters. She calls them snail mail. She is incapable of buying a stamp. So after a day or 2, I ring again, but this time I tell her without preamble, Jennifer, the hippocampus is part of the brain. It is the shape of a seahorse, the size of a seahorse, has the very shine of that primitive marine creature, particularly when pickled. Imagine a seahorse coiled underneath the cerebral cortex. And Jennifer says, OK, Mum, I'm imagining the seahorse. And? Well, I say, the hippocampus is old, like the seahorse, primitive, like the seahorse. All mammals have one. In the brain, says Jennifer. In the brain, I say, in the bottom of the brain. What's it do, says Jennifer, sounding marginally interested. Well, I say, one thing it does is make new memories. The cells there have neuroplasticity. They make new patterns. And they have something called long-term potentiation. It means the patterns they make have the potential to go into your long-term memory. That's nice, says Jennifer. And? Well, I say, in Alzheimer's, the hippocampus often goes first. The neurons become weighed down by plaques. They shrink. Their proteins dissolve. Sclerotic is the word. Right, says Jennifer, the seahorse is sclerotic, shrunk. Like the dried kind. You brought me one of those once from Italy. And then I say, when the hippocampus is sclerotic, when it can't light up its neurons, you can't lay down new memories. You can't process new experiences through to your long-term memory. Oh, says Jennifer. Your father, Jennifer, I say. The ham, Jennifer, I say. The milk, the bus stop, the empty bag. And Jennifer makes a scoffing noise like the paper bag crumpling and says, Wikipedia is a terrible thing. But the next day she calls back. She says, does he do Sudoku? It's good for the brain. And I say, of course not, his subject is philosophy. And then she says, look, the kids are back at school next week. I'll come over on Monday and we'll take Dad to Bride Hill. And of course that is a lovely idea. But over the 5 days before Monday, I think about Jennifer's choice of a picnic location and review the available web literature on the subject of the hippocampus and realise that the picnic, like for example my grandchildren's extravagant christening parties, is nothing but a trap designed by my daughter to make me look dry, over-analytical and mean. For Bride Hill is more than a nearby ancient monument appropriate to family outings. It is a maze, a ritual maze cut in chalk. Jennifer, I'm certain, has been reading of the performances of rats in mazes and about the map-forming functions of the hippocampus thus discovered, and in her usual hazy, unscientific manner, has concluded that if her father, Jeff, who indeed has grown whiskery and long-nosed with the years, is placed in the maze and succeeds in finding the part of the centre he devised so many years ago, chiefly for her amusement, she, Jennifer, will have successfully demonstrated to me, a stupid mother with the outdated science degree, that there is nothing sclerotic about his hippocampus, and that he does not have Alzheimer's disease. Once I've realised this intention, I strongly consider, over a period of 3 days, the possibility of telephoning my daughter and telling her that I've rumbled her. Also, that her test is thoroughly unscientific and based on a false principle. The hippocampus does form maps in our heads. It is the way that a new visitor to Bride Hill would turn his view of the twisting white paths and his sniffs of the chalk and turf and his orientation to the sun and the long shadows into a map in the mind, a concept of how to get to the middle of the maze. But it is a tool, a processing tool, not a repository of maps. And it isn't our only way of finding our way about either. We can also orientate ourselves using our long-term memories, which is how Jeff is still perfectly well able to walk into the ironmonger's. The bus stop, on the other hand, which moved this year, is beyond him. A map of Bride Hill exists, I'm fairly sure, in Jeff's long-term memory, for he's been there so often, and on Monday he may well be able to access that, despite the probable state of his hippocampus. The bus stop is the first test, not the maze. But how can I ring and tell Jennifer that? She'll simply deny the whole thing. On Sunday, I find the lawnmower out, abandoned on the half-cut lawn, but still, I do not call. And so it is that on the Monday, I put on the table several things which are in Jeff's long-term memory already, things which do not need to go through the hippocampus and its LTP cells to be recognised and loved. The tartan thermos flask, the sandwiches in greaseproof paper and elastic, his red cagoule, picnic map. Then his daughter comes, fat and 40, freckled and smiling, and she's safely in long-term too, mine and his. And if Jeff seems astonished, if he's forgotten the short-term arrangements for the picnic, which I have gone over and over with him, well, would he not notice? Aren't we all surprised by joy? Isn't that what joy is? So, Jennifer drives the car. Jeff sits in the front with his sun hat on, and I am in the back beside the baby seat. Jennifer is wearing sunglasses and peers off and to the left, checking the sat-nav. I thought you'd know the way, I say, and she says, no, now I have my tom-tom, I can't remember anything. And Jeff, who really is on top form, says it's all marvellous, and there is an argument to be made for smart machinery actually being part of our brain, that we are all semi-cyborgs, and perhaps have been ever since we invented the pocket watch, or indeed the hand axe. Jennifer is smiling, tapping the indicator with a polished nail, and I can tell she is thinking not much wrong there. And I want to tell her, your dad does this. His chat track about semi-cyborgs was processed in the hippocampus years ago, and now it lives in his long-term memory, and he can get it out and use it on cue. It's now that can't go through there, down through the pipes to his long-term memory. Ask him where we're going, Jennifer.